It's good to be live streamed today. Thank you. I'll remind everyone to turn their microphone on if they would like to be heard. And this is the last day in a series of 4 public budget meetings. And I do believe that there is no one, although there will be, there's no one who can't say that this budget process for 2012 has been anything but open and transparent, and there's been many, many opportunities for groups and members of the public to address council on a variety of issues. So, having said that, we left off yesterday at the capital budget summary, and I guess we'll pick up there, and we'll ask Wayne to get us started. Thank you. Dinner is being served at 5:30.
Thank you, Your Worship. We'll just quickly do a little overview of the capital budget. As you can see from the summary sheet, in 2012 we are recommending just over $9.6 million worth of work in the city. Certainly for a city our size with our constraints, that is quite a large number, so we've tried to maximize every dollar we can. We are funding that with $1,092,000 from the tax base. That's an increase of $160,000 over 2011 funding from the tax base. It's something we've been striving to do with council's approval, and certainly we hope that that we can continue to make progress in that area. From reserves, we are $2,124,000. I'll round it off. This includes a contribution from the GBE reserve, and we will perhaps discuss that when we get into the details of the budgets. The rest are from mostly equipment reserves and other reserve funds that we've put aside over the years. Just under $3.5 million is funded from utilities. As council is aware, we don't raise that kind of money in capital and utilities, so we will need to borrow on the utility side of our business where we have capacity to fund some of that work. Then $47,000 is hoped to be raised in donations. Just under $1.2 million in grants from our senior partners. $800,000 from the gas tax, which we have a little bit in reserve there we haven't spent over the years, as well as the contribution for 2012. We will be debenturing $589 on the tax side of our business. That is related to projects that are either coming forward from previous years, haven't been completed, or have a payback that we will see a reduction in expenses on in 2012 or 13 when they're actually due. And then other funding for 297, we can discuss that when we get into the detail of the budget. I think it's important for council to realize, certainly through the early part of the 1900s, all cities, particularly urban municipalities, were expanding. And the main thing that the taxpayer looked for from this council and previous councils were sidewalks, roads, some facilities to conduct their recreation businesses from, police and fire. And that was probably what governments were providing at the local level right through to the 1960s. Somewhere in the 70s, the taxpayer wanted more from local government. They asked us to get into other services. And not only in Owen Sound, but throughout the province and throughout the world, we expanded into those services. And I think in part because we realized the expansion of our hard services had kind of reached an end. Cities had grown. We didn't have to put in new sidewalks, roads. We already had our recreation centers, etc. So we went down that path, and over the next 30 to 40 years we didn't maintain those services. And now we're at a point where people expect, I'm going to call them the softer services. They fully expect that, they're entitled to that, and we provide that. But some of our hard services are in bad need of repair. Our sidewalks, our roads, our recreational facilities. And in Owen Sound, certainly due to a number of circumstances, we've been able to keep repairing those. But we are at a bit of a crossroads where we need to increase the sustainable, tax-supported capital funding. We've done a tremendous job, certainly councils, previous staffs, of maximizing grant dollars. We're all aware of the tremendous number of grant dollars we've received in the last decade. We had the influx of the GBE fund that has helped us do our big dig and is going to help us pay for our rec center. But we need to, in the next few years, get our tax-supported capital up so that it's sustainable. That's a challenge for Owen Sound. It's a challenge for all small urbans, but it's one that in this budget, we've addressed it for the first time in a decade. Hopefully we can continue to address it, but it will be difficult. I wish I could tell you it'd be easy. It won't be. It's going to be a difficult challenge for this council and future councils, but certainly as staff, we're trying to bring forward recommendations that will allow us to keep, working away at our capital infrastructure deficit. So with that, if there's no questions on the lead sheets, perhaps we'll get into the details. Seeing none, our first detail is information systems. And as you can see, there's a recommendation for just under 274,000, 183 from taxation, 90 supported from utilities, and certainly Jamie Walpole is bringing forward what he really feels we need to do in order to keep this municipality moving ahead. Technology is the key to what we do. It's becoming more of the key every day. And I'm not sure there's any questions on this particular budget or not.
Thank you, Worship. Just a quick question. Art Gallery POS, what is that?
That's a point of sale system for the art gallery. It's something they've wanted for a while. They have actually brought forward funding in the past for that, and they haven't got it. So it's something I think as a staff we feel is necessary. But it would be a point of sale system for them as opposed to a fairly archaic method they use currently.
Yes, through your worship. I noticed that we are approving, thank heavens, the infrared camera for the building department so we can conform to the new changes to the building code. That's a good move and certainly one that's timely.
Yes, I'd just like to comment. I think this division of our business is really important to us with our live streaming today. Is there any thought that we might change the division name to communications and technology? Because it's really, really vital. I'm thinking about all of the screens, the TV screens that we have up in the Bay Shore right here, and the whole communication piece is really kind of neat. Is this where you bring that kind of thing?
I'm sure the city manager will take that under advisement and
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the IT capital budget. There was a very detailed report that Mr. Walpole did earlier this year on work that needed to be done to secure our network, our servers, the equipment, and to kind of clean up things. And I'm just wondering how much of that plan is being addressed in this budget and how much is being deferred.
I'll let Jamie speak to that. He's certainly much better prepared than I am.
One thing, and I don't know whether it be Jamie or whether it would be the treasurer. And that is, in priorities, a lot of them have a letter A, B, C. But there's a number of them, like new desktop software licenses, that have no, oh, I see, they're not recommended, okay. Sorry about that. That explains it. Answered my own question.
Thank you, Worship. Moving on now to, I believe the Parks Fleet is next, and there's a recommendation of $418,000. Almost all of this comes from equipment reserve. A small amount, $6,000, is coming for the landscape trailer, is coming from the GBE funding for 1 year. Any questions? Pam is here to answer them.
Just one housekeeping note, if I could, for council. The tailgate sander was actually funded in 2010, and I believe it's been ordered, so it won't be part of, 2011, won't be part of 2012, so we can take it out.
Questions? We'll move on then to Fleet Cemetery, 1 vehicle. It's on our replacement schedule list, so I think it's fairly standard practice. Seeing no questions, move on to Harrison Park.
In terms of the fleet management program or initiatives, just where are we at with that?
Through your worship, that is one of the tasks that we assigned to the position for the new Public Works Manager. So when that position is filled, then that will be one of their priorities.
I'll just mention, your worship, that much of this, the Harrison Park and parks in general, when you see reserve funding, is coming from the Georgian Bay Energy Reserve Fund for 2012.
Quickly to the director on, just on that GBE funding, sort of the one-time, 1-year funding and the discussion we had at the last meeting about, so first of all, how much is the GBE funding is in the capital this year? Is it 400,000?
It's just under 500,000.
And is it fair to say, without actually asking for a breakdown of each point, it's all in parks, or?
It's almost all of parks, much of cemetery, quite a bit of community services, and one portion had to go to the engineering works budget, as I needed to allocate it in order to fully fund our budget this year. So we can certainly provide that list to council, but it is almost all of, as I say, parks, cemetery, community services. The facade grant, for instance, this year we funded from the Georgian Bay Energy. Again, that's certainly a heritage program. But I did have to put some into works in order to fully fund our capital budget this year.
And then just moving on to Harrison Park, question to, so about the electrical upgrade, that's a carryover from last year, is that right?
That's correct. And that's actually about the third phase of the electrical upgrade in Harrison Park. And that 161,000 will buy and replace a number of pieces of equipment, transformers, etc., that have in the past been provided through Hydro One. They need to be upgraded and replaced, and we have to buy those from Hydro One. But Hydro One considers Harrison Park a private property, so you'll see some new things going in there, hopefully early in 2012.
And then just a question on washroom and kitchen. Which washroom and kitchen is that?
That would, just so council is aware, any facilities that are located in parks, we've placed them within the park. It would be the washroom and the kitchen in the Harrison Park Community Center.
Oh, okay, well, those are certainly in need of upgrade, that's for sure. Okay, thank you.
Well, I had figured out where you were talking about with the washrooms and kitchen, but is that going to make those washrooms accessible?
Through you, your worship, there is a large step down to those washrooms now. There are some provisions under the AODA and the new accessibility legislation that deals with heritage buildings. We will explore opportunities, I'm sure, as Mr. McRoberts and Mr. Rupenthal undertake, RFPs and to do that work, to look at opportunities to improve the accessibility of those washrooms. However, the space is quite constrained as well. We're dealing with an elevation change, so we'll do our best.
All right, the second part of my question is, I understand there's going to be a new hydro service to the park. Is that included in this year's budget, where it's going to be further up the hill?
Just say yes.
Repeat the question, please.
My question is, I understand under the provisions working with Ontario Hydro, the new place where the hydro is going to come in is going to be further up the hill than it currently is. And is some of that funding going towards that new entranceway and metering? Because I understand the metering will be on that pole as it comes into the park. Is that correct?
I'm not sure exactly the answer to that question, Councillor. I could get that information for you.
If you would, please. Thank you.
Your Worship, I was going to ask the same question about the accessibility. I know we've talked about it at accessibility committee, but there's so little space there. You might be able to put in one unisex accessible washroom, but I'm not sure how adequate that would be to the overall need for a washroom in that facility. But we probably should go through accessibility once the plans are designed. I mean, we know the restrictions that that building has.
Seeing nothing else, Kelso Beach. And again, this is all funded from the Georgian Bay Energy Reserve. Seeing no questions?
Back to the washrooms at Kelso Beach, I noticed we're putting a new roof on. I'm just trying to remember how accessible those are.
Based upon my understanding, those washrooms are fully accessible from the standpoint of access by wheelchair. I don't know if there's actually cubicles within that are actually wheelchair accessible. That's the only thing I need to verify.
Your Worship, just if I could, as we develop plans for any of our buildings or infrastructure, as certainly Council is likely aware, but just to make the public aware, we take those plans to our Accessibility Advisory Committee and review those plans with them and try to optimize opportunities to make, both, our built environment on the streets as well as our buildings accessible.
My question actually goes back a wee bit to Harrison Park around the trails, the $10,000 in the trails. Is that the same $10,000 we talked about yesterday in the trails project? Okay, that's what so this is capital, okay. So the other thing is, I know at some point we need to talk about the plan we had last year of doing Friends of Harrison Park and doing some fundraising, especially with a birthday party coming. At what point do we talk about that? It's not in the capital budget. In the operating budget. We did. That's right. Okay, thank you.
No.
Question, last meeting, there was a discussion or a report asked about tennis courts. I can't quite remember what the report was supposed to be. There's at least 2 or 3 spots in here that it talks about tennis courts. I know none of them are for 2012 specifically, but the report that's coming forward is to,
I believe the request you're referring to was with respect to the Victoria Park Master Plan, and the plan, you know, basically there are tennis courts that are located in the lower part in St. George's Park, haven't been used for years. The recommendation was to, you know, in that lower part of the park, that area wouldn't have tennis courts. I believe there was a request that through the Recreation Advisory Committee, we look at our inventory of tennis courts in Owen Sound and see, do we have enough, do we need more? And if we do, should we be looking at reinvesting in that one, or perhaps enhancing the tennis courts that are already in other locations?
okay, that's good, because there's a number of capital items coming up in the near future around tennis courts. Thank you.
Moving on to Victoria Park, you can see the master plan skateboard park relocation. Total 100,000, 60,000 coming from the Georgian Bay Energy Reserve, the 40,000 from donations. We're hoping to have a partner or a donor for the $40,000, and staff are working on that at this time.
On that point, the $100,000, specifically, how did you arrive at $100,000?
The 100,000 is certainly an estimate, and our plan is certainly to work with Mr. McRoberts as the demolition of the Coliseum structure is planned. Brad tells me that if I can save him grinding up and demolishing some concrete, I actually save him some costs, so that's positive. We'll have to decide before the building comes down what is the best section of that concrete in accordance with the master plan that we want to save. Then we'll have to decide how we cut it, landscape around it, move the modular jumps up from the park below the hill, and then look toward, what can we add to the park within the budget to make it a better skateboard park for certainly the short term for the youth in the community.
The amount we spent this year was down at the current one.
The amount we spent this year, we bought a few new modular jumps to put in the park downtown. It was about $11,500, and actually the city was very fortunate to receive a donation to cover the entire cost of that purchase, although that wasn't planned last year, so that was a surplus in last year's budget, or this year's budget.
Donation from?
Donation was from the Scenic City Order of Good Cheer.
There's one right at the bottom of the page that I don't understand, and that is, I'm assuming it's replace wooden structures surfacing Inglis. Inglis Falls is under the Conservation Authority.
It would be Inglis Park, and it's a wooden play structure, through your worship.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I was thinking Ingles Falls, and I was wondering why we were funding the Conservation Authority that way.
On to the boat launch, and we're going to place the control there. Nothing there on the other part. Two projects here recommended. Questions? On to sports field. Projects here field are the sports field. Sports field, those who look at
Through your worship, my understanding from the Recreation and Parks Advisory Committee meeting was that the infield would be skinned to the 65-foot mark. And I did understand that the entire cost would be, or was to be borne by the group, the Slow Pitch Men's League, who had asked for the request. Mr. Howard has arranged a meeting with representatives of that group, but certainly it's my understanding that that money won't come from the Tom Williams Reserve, that any costs for renovations that we're doing there would be funded through that group. We were to report back through Rec Committee, was my recollection, with the amount that they were willing to contribute. So there may be sort of, to compare it to an engineering project, there may be some costs that are truly the city's, sort of that oversizing component, but most of the project, you're correct, Councillor, should be funded, I think, by the group that had requested that based on the direction of the committee.
Well, that was the question I was going to ask, and just to reinforce, though, okay, so I get your sort of oversizing city cost thing, but that's not a $5,000, $3,500 breakdown, at least not in my mind, so.
So our plan will be to bring that back through Recreation Committee and let you have, you know, exactly what they're willing to contribute, and then what exactly will those costs be before we would move ahead with that.
And just to reiterate, what they're willing to contribute is
Well,
what would get done.
I don't want to put the cart before
Right,
the horse,
yes.
but there is a meeting planned, but certainly that's our understanding.
Yes, this is all starting to make a bit of sense to me, how we have a fund at the Community Foundation under Tom Williams, and that money comes each year. Is that designated into this budget this time? The fund that, the interest fund that we get each year?
No, we put that into reserve each year, and then as projects come up, either Tom Williams Park or in the Inner Harbor,
Yes.
we come to council with the approval of the two people who look after that particular estate, and we get the approval to use those funds at that time.
Well, I think things are looking pretty good for our parks next year.
Just wondering about sort of our long-term plans for Duncan McClellan Park. There's quite a lot of stuff in here for 2013. Do we have an overall plan about basically giving that park a pretty significant facelift, I think is what...
Certainly, through your worship, you'll see in the budget that we have for a number of years planned a phased approach to replacing the bleachers in that park. Certainly, it continues to host provincial and national events. It's considered a great venue by both the Ontario and Canadian men's and women's fast pitch associations. So certainly, there is a parks plan, and we continue to work away at ensuring that that park is at a standard where we can host those events. An important, one of the important things to the tournament hosts that we hear is around the notion of bleachers. So what we've done is sort of a 5-year approach to trying to fix those bleachers. Well, not really fix them, but replace them over time.
In respect to the bleachers that we use at Duncan McClellan, our bleachers in a lot of areas, Harrison Field is a case in point, are not in the best of repair. I'm wondering if for Duncan McClellan, if we were to look at developing some portable bleachers that could be used there and then could be used at Harrison Park or could be used at the soccer complex. These are really neat. You drive them in, you drop them down, you crank a few cranks and whatever. And that way, they are a little more expensive, but your utilization could be such that you're getting a lot more use out of those dollars, which makes economic sense in the long term. And I'm wondering if we could take a look at that.
We certainly can, and you'll recall in the Victoria Park Master Plan that, you know, the ultimate plan for the grandstand was maybe for something smaller, depending on the decision of the Ag Society. And there has been some discussions with the Ag Society and the local fast pitch group around partnering towards some portable bleachers. I don't know if you were up at Duncan this summer, but saw all those portable bleachers, but your idea is a tremendous one. We could use them at different venues throughout
Well,
the city.
Kelso Beach during Summer Folk, during the Fall Fair, Duncan during major events. The soccer complex is Remembrance Day for children and veterans. I think that would be a really good long-term investment. And the reason I like the portability is you're not duplicating the same things in every park. And very rarely are there two events on at exactly the same time. And so in the end, we would have better facilities at really a lower cost because we're moving the bleachers to wherever we want them. And this would benefit a raft of organizations and events. Everything from, as you said, Remembrance Day to Summer Folk to fall tournaments, soccer tournaments, Fall Fair, and other high days and holy days. I would make a motion that requests staff to undertake a feasibility study on portable bleachers that could be used in various facilities. And at that point, we can compare the cost of installation of permanent bleachers versus the portable bleachers. I realize there's some labor involved, but we would end up with less bleachers to maintain, and we could maintain them at a higher level.
Just to confirm, that would come back to us through Parks and Rec?
One more item on Duncan McClellan, the signs they have up there, the ones that commemorate the different years of championships. I know it's been raised in public, but it is to the point that those signs are either a group, the group that fundraised and put them up in the first place are either going to have to fix them or they're going to have to come down. I mean, this past summer, they were in really rough shape.
Certainly, those signs were placed by the groups that won those championships. Perhaps a letter to them indicating that they need to be, a plan for repairing them. Maybe they could just be painted white if they don't have money to be really refurbished this year, but that they, that a plan should be put together by that group to address the state or the condition of those signs.
I'd move that, Your Worship. Contact the groups that fundraised for the commemorative signs, I guess you call them, billboards up at Duncan McClellan and talk to them about refurbishing them.
On to the Bay Shore Sports Hall of Fame, and there's $10,000. I don't believe we're going to undertake that this year, but we're starting our funding. Is that fair, Pamela?
Through you, Your Worship, this is the year that there should be a new wave installed. We've had 5 years of inductees. The cost of that wave, we have worked with Mr. Tui, and we have an estimate on the next wave to take out the display cases that the wave would replace, if you can picture where the wave is now. To take those cases out and to develop a new wave would be about $40,000. So you'll see in your budget that 10 is being recommended. Certainly when the members of Recreation and Parks met with the Sports Hall of Fame group, we talked about cost sharing, but you'll see that only 10 is in there this year, so that means there won't be a new wave unless there's a significant other contribution this year.
We'll move on to cemeteries. Quite a bit of work here, again, all funded from Georgian Bay Energy Reserve.
To me, the most significant thing there is definitely the road resurfacing. If you're ever up there in the spring at a funeral, the roads are in really serious shape, as is the road in the campground. I don't think anything's been spent on the cemetery roads in the last 15 or more years, 20 years.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was just looking at this fencing, heritage fencing. We've got $100,000 planned over the next 3 or 4 years, $7,500 this year. I can quote my brother Peter, who tells the same joke every time we drive past the cemetery with regard to the fence. That, to me, seems to be a cosmetic change. Is it necessary at this point? I think it's great when we've got, when things are going well, when things around the community aren't going as well. I wonder if that's money that could be spent on something perhaps in this building or somewhere else, instead of redoing cosmetic fence that isn't really going to make any difference to the people that are there.
Through your worship, certainly our hope is in 2012 to embark on, through staff, an upgrade or an update to the master plan for the cemetery. Certainly, fencing has a long-term maintenance cost, and I think it's important to look at opportunities to use hedges and other trees to create that sort of sense of edge around the park. It also creates a sense of privacy for people who are there at the park or at the cemetery visiting. So certainly it would be nice to finish the section along on 2nd Avenue, and that's what this year's funds would be intended to do. But certainly as part of the master plan, I think opportunities to look at other means to create that edge for the cemetery would be warranted. It does, yes.
Just further to that, we have had inquiries about that and requests to complete that fencing.
On to, excuse me, playgrounds, and we have several bits of work here, I guess not at specific playgrounds, just generally at all the playgrounds.
To the Director, about the Timber MacArthur Park, that's not being recommended. Is that just a case that's an older piece of equipment? Is that...
It is, and as long as it stays status quo, it meets standards. As soon as we were to change, if we were to change it, it would no longer meet the current CSA standards, but because it's existing, it's okay. We certainly continue to do regular inspections on all our playgrounds, including that one, to look for any issues around safety. So certainly, you know, that structure, although it's wooden, functions quite well in the park today.
Excuse me, on to community services, the facade program, and several interpretive plaques. This is a continuation of the facade program that I believe is fully subscribed at this time. Through you, Your Worship, on to economic development. This is a continuation of the RED program. I don't believe Steve is here. I'm not fully versed in exactly what he has planned for the RED program this year. I believe it's some more work on Wi-Fi, but it's ongoing, and it's 50 cent dollars through the RED program.
If council could maybe have a report from Economic Development Director to just outline the plans specific for the 2012 RED projects. And I think it would help council get an idea of where that money is being invested. Councillor Purdon.
My understanding is quite a bit of the $40,000 is the DIA projects with the banners, with the little parquet, putting potted trees where the smokers used to be, with the walkway between 2nd Avenue to the market. There's a design there for making a visual link between 2nd Avenue and the market. And those projects have already gone through the DIA and the Community Heritage and Planning, and we're all set. We didn't get it all done this year to have it happen, so my understanding is most of that 40,000 will be carrying out those projects in 2012, but they'll be ready to go soon. There may be some additional things, but I know that 40,000 was the number that the DIA was considering, and perhaps Mr. Holter could also help with that because it was at that committee as well.
Sure. City Manager and then Councillor Lemon.
Thank you. Our Economic Development Officer unfortunately couldn't be in attendance tonight. He had another commitment. One of the things we may be looking at is also the CPR station, because as you're aware, we're given matching funding for that, so we may look at seeing if we can adjust that. But I agree, a report is certainly something that should come forward.
Okay, Councillor Lemon?
I believe the DIA funding is a separate issue. I don't believe it's that 40,000.
Right.
Because the DIA is putting in matching funds. Ergo, there would not be anything from taxation. There's 20,000 from taxation. But I believe there's 40,000 here and about 40,000 in the DIA, and that will not affect the general tax base.
So we'll bring a report.
Okay. Any other questions on that? Seeing none, we'll move along.
Move on. Now we're into our utility section, water and wastewater. Quite a bit of work in both of them, and Mr. McRoberts is here to answer any questions you may have in this section.
Couple of questions to Brad. Improvements related to energy efficiency at the water treatment plant. 250,000. Can you update? I suppose I should know the answer to that question, but I just maybe I'm having a block. I can't recall what. That's just a fairly significant amount. That's all.
Yeah, through your worship, I think as part of an energy audit that was done on the water treatment plant, there were actually $400,000 worth of work recommended as part of that process. What we're basically trying to do is spread that recommendation over basically two separate unique chunks. So 250,000 this year and then 150,000 recommended for 2013. Okay, certainly we can bring an update to the committee members, because some of them may have not been committee members at the time. We can bring that forward and just bring an update as to what the exact scope of that task is.
Councillor Lemon?
I remember something about that, and I believe there was that after 2 or 3 years or more, we would start seeing a reduction based on the operating costs, because when these efficiencies would pay for themselves.
Yeah, I think for most of these energy programs that we're doing, we're typically looking at it from a standpoint of a payback period within 7 years.
I might just mention, Your Worship, at our senior managers meeting, and it leads into the discussion on energy efficiency, we're going to actively research the Green Municipal Fund to see, and that would be a project that might qualify. So we will probably be reporting back on our success of accessing those funds. On to wastewater. I'm not sure if there's any questions there.
I see so you're starting to fund the upgrade now through our process. How did you arrive at 558 would go towards utilities?
The 2/3 funding theory.
So we're, okay, so. Okay. So it's so the same assumption would, okay, that's good, thank you.
Well, this is a lot of money, for sure, right? And I just think the way that the staff is doing this with their work plans, and then does council continually through the committees get updates on how this is all working through the year, right? So, because I think this is a really important piece for all of our taxpayers to realize what we're spending so much money on this year.
Through you, Your Worship, certainly the operating budget, we provide quarterly reports to finance, and those minutes come on to council. The capital is a little different thing for staff to analyze, but we bring reports on the tenders forward to council, so we have a pretty good handle as we complete a tender, how we're doing overall. And if during that process we find that our tenders are coming in significantly over what we have, obviously the city manager working with staff would probably come back and recommend that we perhaps don't complete a project. But so far we've been pretty good at bringing everything in as we need to. But that's how we would catch the capital projects, would be during the tendering process.
Yeah, through your worship, just to follow up on Director Ritchie's comments, as well as there's the wastewater treatment plant upgrade ad hoc committee that also reviews all the process with respect to that major project.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to Councillor Chamberlain, we, assuming we get authority, get through the budget yesterday and today, we'd certainly like to do a press release and send a succinct message out to our residents.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just have a question. I haven't heard much about the stormwater separation program lately, but I noticed we're still putting an awful lot of money into it. Where do we sit with that?
Through you, Your Worship. Certainly from the standpoint of the sewer water stormwater separation program, we've been very successful with respect to our downtown rooftop leader program. What we're basically trying to do now is try to expand the program beyond just the downtown core and actually try to capture what I would call the major contributors, or I guess the term is what the easy fruit that lies at the bottom. There are certainly some areas within the city where if we were to focus the dollars on those areas right now, with little effort, we would actually get a better return. So we're going to try and work that program in. We're still committing the same amount of money we have in the past, and as you'll see, we're trying to commit that same amount of money over the course of the next 5 years, but the intention would be to continue to dwindle that down.
Will the project ever see the end?
Yes, I hope in my time I see the end of that.
I hope so too.
Yes, Your Worship, through you to the Director of Operations. When we put the, did 6th Street and the storm step up there, is that area all complete now? There is a complete separation on the East Hill at 6th Street?
Certainly the section that was replaced, that was the purpose of the city's involvement in 6th Street, which was a county road, was basically to replace the sanitary sewer and separate the storm and the sanitary. So as we go through in various sections of road rework, either through the county or through city's work, we basically look to try to target separation of those storm sanitary sewers.
But is there more up in that area that hasn't been done yet?
I believe there's still some up in that area, yes.
But now that we've got it up the hill, would it not be fairly easy to do the rest of it?
It's a matter of, separating all the storm and sanitary as you move through. We have several sections of combined storm and sanitary sewer. Actually, when we get into the engineering work, you'll see that we have additional capital projects that we're doing on 4th Avenue East, which includes separation of storm and sanitary as well.
But up around 7th Avenue, everything's done there, or is this?
Up on 7th Avenue on top of the hill, I think most of that basically was all newer sewer, not combined sewer.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to echo the city manager's comments and Councillor Chamberlain's about the importance of communicating to the public as well about how the big picture looks in terms of the capital versus the operating expenses. I think that's a really important piece. And also perhaps sometime during the year at the halfway point to have a little status report for us on the big picture, a bit like what we're doing right now. We're spending time to look at everything that's happening, that maybe at a halfway point or somewhere that we spend a bit of time to look at how we're doing and where we are, also for the public. Because often I think we spend a lot of time on those details and it's hard to have that bigger picture.
Moving on, Your Worship, to roads, I think it's significant to look at the total dollars here. We're hoping to do just under 2.6 million in, I'm calling it road work, but our public works this year. And when you look ahead at those last 3 columns in the coming years, you can see that there's a significant contribution is going to be made to, I'm going to call them our harder surfaces. So this is a big part of our capital budget and will continue to be. And certainly Brad is here to answer any questions you have.
A number of questions here. The 4th Street East storm replacement, that's almost doubled since the last time we met. Anyway, could you update us on that?
Sure. Actually, maybe while we're here on this page, maybe we'll update council on a couple of changes that have occurred with respect to the engineering costs. Certainly that is the one, as Councillor McManaman identified. What's happened since the last time we've met to this point in time is that we've had more refined engineering estimates completed by either our consultants or our staff related to these works, as some of them are basically kind of being scoped or engineered as we currently speak. So in the review of the 4th Street storm replacement, it was identified to me based upon some preliminary cost estimates that our costs had risen roughly by about $150,000. So that is one change, and maybe when I finish completing the changes, I'll identify sort of how we dealt with them throughout the whole, with some assistance with Director Ritchie. The second location where we've had a significant cost changes related to road services, that was 4th Avenue East, which I just spoke about. That's a reconstruction in the storm and the sewer separation program. That again increased from previously about $500,000 to about $750,000. Again, that's based upon very preliminary engineering estimates as they come through and as information comes available to us since last time we met in November. So again, that's another significant change there as well. How we have basically tried to address these changes, you will note that we have reduced the work on 4th Avenue West by $100,000. Our obligations on 4th Avenue West are the requirement to upgrade the utilities. We were anticipating at that time that we may also include some reconstruction work on the road. In order to be able to accommodate these increases, we've had to eliminate that road work at this time, and we'll basically just do the utility work. And then I believe Yeah, that's it. And so maybe Director Ritchie, I'm trying to recall how we were funding that change in difference in cost.
We did some adjusting of the utility share as well as we moved some of the gas tax around to accommodate these changes. So it was a little bit of a process, but we managed to get the estimates in and the cost covered. So that's how we did, Your Worship.
I wanted to get back to 4th Street East, but on 4th Avenue West, so you're not going to do the road, we're just putting in services.
Correct.
How are you going to do that without doing the road?
Well, you basically would, the road reconstruction wouldn't necessarily be replacing the asphalt, but it would involve putting in some curbs, some new storm sewers, and doing a whole surface overlay of the asphalt. In this case, basically what it means, we'll do a patching. So you'll have a strip of asphalt down the center of the road, but we won't do any storm work or any curbing, or any sidewalk replacement.
And on 4th Street East then, I mean, that is one heck of a project now. Can you just go through exactly what that project is?
Okay. Just in some extensive detail what this project involves, it will involve basically from property line to property line of the road allowance, pretty much a replacement of the entire infrastructure within that section of road. So that will include storm, sanitary, water, asphalt, sidewalks, curb, and boulevards. That is 4th Avenue East. Oh, sorry. Oh, 4th Street, back up, oh, the storm? Okay, pardon me. 4th Street storm is actually a storm drainage pipe right now that's in very seriously deteriorated condition. Actually, we've gotten to the point of actually having cordon off. There's a bit of a trail that runs down from 4th Street East down to Harrison Park trail system. It runs down the embankment, and it's deteriorated, it's very significantly. The pipe's basically corroded. At this point in time, we have sinkholes basically collapsing where the pipe has been. Drainage is still flowing through the pipe, but you know, it is a bit of a hazard to people. There is a bit of a trail down through that section. The difficulty is the type of pipe you need to place. The soil conditions aren't suitable for simply an excavation and replacement of pipe. Part of the problems we may be having with some of these sinkholes may be that sections of the pipe are shifting as they move, as they slip on the slope. So the intention is to put the storm sewer a bit deeper into more stable soil material, and also basically try to make it anchor it very well so that we don't have pipe slipping from its various joints and sections due to the incline. It's a very steep incline.
Sorry, it's just that project, and I'm not blaming you, of course, but it's just that's gone from a problem to initially to now the biggest project, or is it the biggest? It's starting close to the second biggest project we're going to undertake this year. So that's quite a movement. Agreed. Yeah. So that's all for now.
Yes, it is. Between, on 4th Avenue East, between 6th Street and 7th Street, we have a B beside it. Can you sort of tell me when that's going to happen? It's not an A, it's a B. Yes, still recommended for this year, but so we do have an idea when it'll be in the good weather.
Through you, Your Worship, I think just to get understand the timing of the project, the premise we had was that we would get early approval from council to begin the engineering work, but since we're getting our budget system basically in place, we can proceed very timely with engineering work and design work during the winter months, and come spring, we will be able to tender this work and complete it in the summer of 2012.
That's really good, isn't it?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, please, Director of Operations, the 7th Street East storm outfall, is that down by the river, or where is that, the bottom of the ravine? Where is that? Or what is it?
Through Your Worship, it is an outfall basically on the Sydenham River. It is basically located just at the end of 7th Street East, right at the river, which would be the parking lot 3, I believe it is, just to the south of us here. There's an outfall there. One of the storm events we had, I believe, in early fall, late summer actually knocked out pipe sections in that outfall. The actual concrete structure of the outfall remained in place, but all the pipe sections basically collapsed. So the intention is that needs to be replaced and repaired. And again, it's a priority as well since it is in a deteriorating, deficient state.
Thank you very much.
Sorry. Third Avenue East, the upgrade there on the East Bay Shore Road, just engineering this year, that looks like.
That's correct.
And what would be the, and then moving forward into the following, what is the county share
I don't know exactly what the full county share would be. I mean, it's a project that the county's been wanting to do for several years. Our difficulty's been is basically having the dollars available to replace the utilities. So I don't know what the road reconstruction cost would be associated with that project. That would be at the county level. What we've allocated here is our cost to basically remove and replace a trunk water main and also a trunk sanitary sewer.
So that's the engineering for this year, that's the engineering for our side of it. Do they, is there not a contribution from them for the engineering work?
Correct.
There is, there is.
I have a question on county roads, and I maybe should know the answer to it, but I don't. I understand us paying for the cemetery because that's us, and that's functions along the road. But with stormwater management, a fair amount of the stormwater comes off the roadway itself. Did we get a county contribution to stormwater replacement or development on county roads?
County roads, basically the way that I understand how it functions is it's curb to curb, so their responsibilities lie from curb to curb. They basically are responsible for any storm drainage systems within the county road. We are responsible for utilities such as sanitary and water. But yeah, so they're responsible for the storm component of any county road or county right-of-ways.
Just one, more of a comment on Third Avenue East. Is the city aware of, I understand that Hydro One is going to be doing a complete upgrade of all the Hydro One services in 2012, all along Third Avenue, 800 block, 900 block, the 1000 block, 11 and 12. They're going to be completely replacing all of the hydro infrastructure. They laid the conduit. Now they're going to actually do the infrastructure. And I would, urge that operations talk to the local superintendent with Hydro One. It may have an impact on the type of streetlight poles and so on that we're looking at. That was brought to my attention in a conversation. Thank you.
Just to comment on that, that would be one thing that would have to be coordinated through the county. It is their county right away.
Yeah.
So I'll bring that to the attention of the county director as well.
I know it was discussed as being a fairly major project.
Okay.
So.
Just a quick question, are they replacing above ground or underground? Are they putting the infrastructure under the ground or above? Okay.
On to streetlights, your worship, and several jobs there. I guess a general refinish some poles and replace some on Third Avenue between 8 and 900.
Responsibilities as the burnt-out streetlight reporter. There's about 4 out on the 800 block between 7th and 8th Street currently. Second Avenue East on the 800 block between 7th and 8th. They've been out for a few weeks.
I'm a little slow on this one, but when you talked about all those things going underground, I remember at the infrastructure around the Wi-Fi for the hotspots in town, they talked about making sure that that got put in at the same time there was anything going underground. So that whole coordination piece, I don't know how that all will happen, but I just want to make sure we note that.
Certainly, yeah, we can, certainly it's a separate conduit that would be used for hydro versus what would go through a Wi-Fi, but when we would do any reconstruction work, we would be doing that, but the sections that we're speaking about reconstructing on Third Avenue are out towards more the Bay Shore end of things as opposed to in the downtown core.
Okay, thank you.
I have to say, I do think Councillor Chamberlain's right on that, there was extra conduit that the city placed, and I'll ask other members of council if you can recall from operations. Another piece of conduit was placed, oh, there we go, okay. Mr. Ritchie.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. We have been, and you'll see it in the IT budget, that we have $20,000 in there. Wherever we do construction, we try to coordinate with Brad's group to make sure we get conduit in. We will do our best to discuss, this would be a county project along with Hydro One, to see if there's an opportunity for us to do. I'm not sure that $20,000 from the sound of that may be enough for us, but we'll certainly make sure that where we can, we're part of that discussion.
I'm really certain it'd be before your time with the city, but I'm pretty sure that conduit is there in the particularly the 800 and 900 blocks of Third Avenue. Thank you. There we go. Thank you.
I think the other conversation I remember from somewhere was letting Rogers know when all of this is happening, if they've got cable, because there was a conversation that the road got dug up again from the private sector when it had just been completed, and next time we should coordinate it.
Yeah, I had one question of clarification. The new traffic lights that were installed at the rec center, are those not supposed to be actuated on need as well as timing? So now we're seeing the traffic coming out of the elevator able to move away from that, not in conflict with the traffic going around to 14th Street and First Avenue. So it seems to be working very well.
Thank you. That was a challenging intersection, but that's generally, it seems to be working. Thanks. Yes.
Moving on, we are to transit, and we have a bus replacement and some shelters, and then the route study.
Just for the funding of it, 100,000 from other. Where's the other? Or what's the other?
I believe that's the trade-in.
Just to refresh my memory, we bought all those buses basically within about an 18-month time period. So the plan is to replace one a year, so we don't have to replace them all at the same time.
A couple things in the works right now with respect to that. We are looking at a few options. One is, of course, we could replace them with similar type buses, the long buses. We're also going to explore the option of looking at a smaller bus for off-peak times. We're also going to explore the option, too, that there's an opportunity to recondition buses, basically take them, dismantle them, replace them with certain components, put the side panels back on, and basically get another 6 or 7 years out of the life cycle of the bus. So between that and a combination of that over the course of the next 5 years is how we intend to try to replace that fleet. So it'll be a combination of that, but pending some investigations and some findings that we have coming forward to us as part of the transit route study and so on.
Two questions. Number one, when I was working at Transcom, I often used the bus the same time the students were using it. And so obviously those would still be the larger buses because that bus is standing room only at times.
Correct, yeah, the whole concept with using a smaller bus needs to be coordinated around sort of busy schedules. So there might be an opportunity for us to say that, the longer buses get used during the busy peak periods, and then we bring in a smaller bus to run through some of the cycles of the remainder of the day. It's just a matter of coordinating the types of buses we need depending upon the type of service we have and the type of routes we have.
The other question, in the transit study that's being proposed, excuse me, would they be looking at the possibility of running a bus out 10th Street right up to Walmart, the new extension?
Certainly the route study will look at alternate routes to basically bring the system throughout, whether it'll to find efficient routes that service the existing clientele. One of the other components of the study is also to look at, which would not be paid by city cost, but it's an option for Georgian Bluffs, is to extend the service out to the Galaxy Cinema Mall complex. And so we'll be investigating that as part of that route study as well.
On to parking, Your Worship, and Lot 5 is in this year, and that's an estimate of the cost.
Yeah, just to follow up on parking lot 5, it goes back to when we received a tender earlier in the late summer, early fall again. We received a tender that was well over our budgeted estimate of $250,000 at the time. We also have to be caveated some other concerns we might have because of the fact that area is a former commercial area. There might be some other impacts that might create surprises for us. So this is an estimate of the scope of work that we believe we can achieve. It is premised on the fact that there aren't any surprises. We are going to go through a process of gathering some additional information, both from a standpoint of geotechnical and soil data, to be able to understand, can we make the engineering design more efficient? And we'll have to explore all options to basically try to bring that cost back more in line.
Thank Thank you, Your Worship. Just to make life more interesting at Police Services, who now look after collecting the coins, et cetera, for the meter heads. The Royal Mint are coming out with new coins starting next year that have less metal in them, and the present meter heads that we have will not work with the new coins that are coming out because they're lighter. The ones we have are 15 years old, and we bought them used 15 years ago, so there may be a capital expense coming out, which of course would be funded through parking revenue, but when the new coins come out, those heads won't work.
I think to the Director of Operations and some councillors are talking about the parking meter heads and the ticket spitters. There are known issues with the functionality of the ticket spitters that we have, and also lot number 5. I think beside the Bayshore Community Center, it's probably the largest municipal parking lot that the city owns, I would think. Probably pretty close to, yeah. So I think it's a fundamental project that that parking lot is in it's brutal condition, and it is, the sinkholes are getting deeper and deeper, and in the last 2 months noticed a significant change in the rolling hills in there. Traffic.
If I could, Your Worship, certainly parking is self-funding, as all of council is aware, and with that information, all of our reserve funds will be used up to do Lot 5, and we'll have to discuss with our current managers of the parking system these possible future costs and come back, obviously, with a report and perhaps a strategy to council of how we get more money in the parking revenues to pay for these obviously significant future capital contributions are going to be necessary, because our current rate will not fund what we obviously need to do. So there'll be a report coming back. We will work with the police services to do that. We'll be all the way over to works vehicles. These are all up for normal replacement. I don't know if there's any questions or not, and they're from the Vehicle Equipment Reserve.
Just to add to Director Ritchie's comments, the one item there, the paint striper, that $18,000 is required due to new legislation that's come out that requires us to use water-based paints as opposed to solvent-based paint. So the existing painter or paint striper would have sufficed for a few more years, but unfortunately it's not equipped to deal with the water-based paints materials that we need to use, so we have to buy a new paint striper.
To ask the question. The water-based paint, does it have Do we know if it has the same longevity to the paint we're not supposed to use? I'm thinking, do we, it's water, but it snows, we have salt, I'm thinking, do we know?
It'll be similar to, you know, you can use a latex water-based paint for the exterior of your home. Similar as you can use an oil-based, and I'm sure people could advocate one's better than the other. As far as I understand that the longevity of the Z-Pro,
Okay, technology,
wow, you're true, we don't know yet, but the indication is that it's supposed to be. We pretty much replaced most of our striping in the city on an annual basis anyway.
sure, okay. Counselor Lemon, I think it's the same person's idea who thinks that major appliances should only last 2 to 5 years.
I ask you to look to the, my left-hand side, and we do need to spend some money on this building. Because that's a fairly major mess. And I remember when it collapsed right above your head a few years ago. Missed the mayor of the time. So we really have to focus on our roof and maintenance of this building.
Two questions. Just, I know the roof this year, the estimate we had was too high didn't match the budget. What are we looking at timing-wise for this roof? We were also trying to match it with the Bay Shore roof at the same time too, weren't we? I remember that discussion. So anyway, what's the timing on this and the Bay Shore roof? And I can not ask that question later.
I don't think that we'll get the same company be able to get the same company to do both the roofs, but that is something that we are attempting to do.
And a quick follow-up question to the city manager. I see you have money in the budget for City Hall analysis. What do you have in mind with that money?
Through your worship to Councillor McManaman, we've got a firm that looks at the analysis of what your options would be of putting further funds into this building, retrofitting this building, what those costs would be versus a new building potentially. So we just need to get a baseline so that you can make an informed decision on how much money you put into this building, or is it, try and make do till at some point in the future you replace this building. We know we have significant issues right now in this building regarding heating and cooling, some of the environmental issues of this building, the accessibility of this building, the water in this building. The only good news is, I suppose, that currently we have enough space in this building for our current staff complement, but that will likely change in the future as well. So that study, I think we're getting a really good price on it. It's a firm that does these sorts of work quite often. So as soon as the budget gets approved, we're going to get them on that, because we really need, in my opinion at least, to make some informed decisions on how much money we put into this facility and where we put that money.
Thank you. Last point, under renovate council chambers, and I know that's not recommended for this year, but one thing that I noticed at our last public meeting, and it comes up all the time, is the configuration of the council chambers, that our senior managers and staff all have their back to the public, and that, you know, maybe for a regular council meeting, perhaps it's not that big of a deal, but certainly for a public meeting, it's not the best situation. And I know the last city manager, we discussed looking at not renovating the council chamber, but reconfiguring the council chamber, and seeing if there was a way to fix that problem. And then we just had a public meeting last Thursday, and I noticed that all the staff were talking to the committee, but not to the public. And maybe it's just more in presentation than anything, but I guess I'd ask, could the current city manager take a look at that?
If I had $100,000, I'd probably demo the council chamber and start over.
But since you don't,
But since I don't, we'll take a look at what we might be able to do. But quite frankly, even the desks that you're sitting at are really substandard now.
Just on that, I think, actually, I was talking to Donna, our custodian, the other day, and she noticed something that I had noticed as well, is that this building, particularly this council chamber, is being used a lot more than it was even 5 or 10 years ago for public meetings and for open houses and that, and it's not just used, you know, for a couple hours on Monday night. You know, most of the public meetings, and we're having more of those, are all taking place in this building. And so there are some accessibility issues with the configuration that's in here as well. So I think the councillor has a good point that if it was just Monday nights for a couple of hours, you know, maybe it doesn't really matter. But even some of our standing committees meet here in this chamber and have public meetings. So I think we need to make sure that it's a public place.
Just to point out that if the Accessibility Advisory Committee, for example, were to hold a public meeting, they would have to not hold it in this room, because we have elected a member of council who required accessibility features. He or she couldn't sit up here under the current configuration. So I think that's something that we have to be really sensitive to. And we did have a situation one night where we had an absolutely packed council chambers and a gentleman in a scooter stuck in the elevator between floors.
All it'll take is money.
On to the Bay Shore, Your Worship. Some significant... Okay.
could we maybe do a library? Librarian.
There's HVAC units, but perhaps they're no longer in the 2012 budget, Greg? Are they still there? The HVAC units at the library? Or at least more? Anyway.
Through your worship, Mayor Haswell, as Councillor McMahon can attest, yesterday 3 of our heating and air conditioning units went down out of 5, and they were all condemned by Union Gas. So we have had no heat in the library on the upper floors. There was a level of heat on the basement floor. And so we have had our terrific city staff working with our custodian to rectify the situation. And I think that Mr. Ritchie's question is that still part of our capital planning budget? I don't know the answer to that question. I know that 3 out of 5 have gone down, and I know that they're all approximately the same age.
The 3 units that have gone down, we're replacing the sort of the internal parts on them, which will bring them back and probably give us, I'm going to say, 5 to 8 years of useful life in them once we get those repaired. And I believe 1 is running now and the other 2. So we were very fortunate to have the weather that we did. And we had someone go down to Toronto this morning, pick up the parts. So things are pretty well back to normal. But yeah, those 3 units, they will be, we have extended the life on those now at a cost of $9,000 approximately.
Is 1 unit $20,000? Is that fair, Craig? Is that what the new one?
I don't know. No, I couldn't answer. It depends on the size.
I just looked.
I don't think that 1 unit would be 20,000. Our biggest unit at the Bay Shore would be 30,000, and our other units at the Bay Shore are around 10 to 11,000. So I'm thinking that for the 20,000, we're probably talking at least 2 units.
So probably for next year, you're going to need 20,000. Sounds like you're going to have at least 2 go next year as well. Is that fair?
It's a possibility. It's a possibility.
Sorry, I've kind of lost track. Could you do a recap of just where we are with what is the request and what is the current plan?
I would take it from the discussion they've just had that certainly the HVAC units there are in deteriorating shape, and I think it would be safe to leave the $20,000 in for next year, as it sounds like that may get us 1 or 2 units. We've already replaced the hardware, I guess, in 3, so it sounds to me like you're definitely going to need another 20,000 next year to replace at least 1, if not 2, new units, as a layman.
So we present the budget as it stands, $20,000 for HVAC, $8,000 for an insurance recommended out-of-building garbage storage.
Thank you. At the last library board meeting, there was some discussion around the $65,000 for carpet, desk alterations, main level, health and safety, and accessibility issues. There was some disappointment at the library board that these weren't included, but there was also understanding of that, the circumstances around the budget. But they did just want to draw the attention that the carpet issues are health and safety, and there are accessibility issues as well there, just to keep council's attention on that these are things that will need to be done somewhere down the road, not too far down the road.
Regarding what Councillor Twaddle said when I was on the library board, that carpet on the main this is the main library floor. I don't know how many years old, Judy Beth told us, but it is old and it's worn out. And this is a trip and fall issue as carpet deteriorates. And also there's accessibility. So it's not even, what bothers me about the carpet issue is it's not on the list for, it's on the list for 2013, no, pardon me, 2012, but it didn't make the cut. We're going to have to look at it seriously next year.
Any further questions for Wyatt?
To Margaret, and not for this year, but the RFID collection security. What is that?
Through your worship, Mayor Haswell to Councillor McManaman, RFID is a radio frequency identification, and it is the next in line for our library security system, which is now outdated. We are having some issues with our security gates and with our security system, and we're looking at that idea that to fix and replace that and to keep a technology going that is already becoming obsolete and out of date, we would get an RFID security system. One of the reasons for this is that it would really increase the efficiencies that we have in the library. Right now, the circulation and the number of people keep increasing into the library, and our staff numbers remain the same. And as you know, a lot of the library processes are clerical or rote. And so having RFID efficiencies would allow us to bring in things like self-checkout. It would allow us to maintain a tighter inventory of the collection. Approximately 3,000 people enter the library every week, which would fill every seat at the Bayshore Center. And a large number of them take out books and return books. So we have thousands of items coming in and leaving every day. And with an RFID security system, one of the things that would allow us to do in self-checkout is that a person could have 6 books in a row. They have their card on top, they pass it over a counter, and those books are checked out to that person. So we can redirect the staff that we have to produce and to provide, I think, services and programs that our library customers expect, and also, I think, future residents to Owen Sound, the library services that they expect when they arrive as well.
If I could, Your Worship, and I hesitate to go here, but I'm going to. As accessibility issues come forward, and they're going to in the next few years through the provincial government's initiative, if Mr. Rupenthal reported through an accessibility committee to council of our buildings that were in below standard current today, we would have almost no buildings in the city that we didn't come forward and said we had to put significant dollars into. And we report directly to council on the state of our buildings, and we've just had this, that discussion in City Hall. It's badly in need of updates, repairs for accessibility, as well as perhaps some health issues, etc. So, as the city manager said a few minutes ago, all it takes is money. But that could be across the entire breadth of our facilities. So I think any reports that come forward, in fairness to all of our facilities and in fairness to all of our employees who work in them, need to be considered by council in the entire breadth of those buildings. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Those are certainly important points, and thank you for bringing them, for pointing them out. I'm sure you're thinking that Cindy should never go on another vacation at this point, but you seem to be doing a fine job manning the ship over there. It's been very busy, I can. Thank you so much.
Through your worship, the library board would like to thank council for taking the library budget into consideration, and we're thankful for your approval of the budget, not your approval. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And with council's indulgence, the fire chief has a relatively reasonable capital budget for 2012. So we will we'll hear that now, and then we'll break for dinner. Are there any questions on any of these items? This small equipment radio system upgrade, digital radio repeater system upgrade. They're all fairly. Councillor McManaman.
Thank you, Worship. A question to the chief for the vehicle exhaust extraction system and the thermal imaging camera. Both of those are replacements. Is that correct? And I realize this is for next year, but
the exhaust extraction system is in one of the bays. It was a back-end bay. Now we'll be able to make it to drive-through bays, so our vehicles can come in the back and drive directly out the front.
okay.
So the initial cost to put in the whole station was $40,000. And this is a section of 10 feet long, and $16,000.
Okay. And the same with, and then on the thermal imaging camera, that's
That would be, yes.
replacement. Thank you.